Welcome to a new episode of the Inexplicable Podcast. Today we're going back to talk about a topic that has always been a must for mystery lovers, the Ouija board. Some consider it just a simple game, while others believe it's a tool capable of connecting us with the world of the unknown. But what really makes the discussions about the Ouija board unsettling are the numerous stories circulating, experienced by ordinary people who have shared them on social networks, blogs, and all kinds of websites. In this episode, I'll tell you 7 of these experiences, stories lived by ordinary people that, I'm sure, will send a chill down your spine. So here it is, Ouija board, 7 chilling cases experienced by ordinary people. My pew, I don't have any tangible evidence to show you, and honestly, I don't really care if you don't believe me. However, I want to tell you what I experienced, because I'm afraid that what I summoned through a Ouija board has crossed the threshold of my house. An entity physically attacked me. It all started with the persistent feeling of being watched, those doors mysteriously closing by themselves, and the sinister sounds of footsteps on the wooden floor when I was alone. Then the situation kept getting worse, until I was forced to stay awake for entire nights because something was shaking my bed or pulling the covers off me. In the middle of the night, sometimes I could hear whispers of my name. In the darkness, the board would disappear for days, only to reappear in places where I would never have left it. I was obsessed. Over time, the entity would manifest as a sinister black figure in the corner of the room, or as the outline of a man watching me from the doorway. The situation was getting worse quickly. It would pull my hair, pinch me with its fingers, leave deep scratches on my skin, and choke me. We tried to bless our house, and fortunately, the entity left our home. Everything returned to normal, if you can call it that. However, one thing is certain. I will never again dare to play with one of those damn boards. Never ever again. I learned my lesson the hard way because the memory of my nightmares will haunt me forever. Skeptical, I always considered ghosts, Ouija boards, and seances a bunch of nonsense. However, years ago, my opinion changed radically when I found myself involved in an experience that was, to say the least, shocking. I was with some people I had just met, and we had decided to play with the Ouija board. We were there, talking with a series of spirits, and I wasn't taking it seriously. Then I decided to test it all out. Being born in Kuwait, I knew Arabic, a language that a friend of my brother, who had recently died in an accident, also spoke fluently. Only one person among the participants in the session knew me well enough. Knowing this, I was convinced that he was the only one who knew Arabic, so I asked to speak with him directly. The board began to write, and incredibly it pointed to the words, "car accident." That revelation shook me, but I wasn't fully convinced. So I decided to ask an even more detailed question in Arabic. I asked how old he was at the time of his death. The answer was first a 1 and then a 3. 1-3. At that point, my mind went blank. No one could have known those details, let alone understood what I was saying. I decided to go further, asking for more details about the incident. When the board described the dynamics of it with minute details, I decided that was enough. I stopped, got up, and left. I never wanted to see that group of people again in my life. That session had pushed me to the edge of rationality, forcing me to completely reconsider my beliefs about the supernatural. Now, I no longer think that seances are nonsense. On the contrary, I am completely and deeply terrified of them. It's not a game anymore. This is a true story, 100%. About 15 years ago, my sister had some friends over one evening. They were in the basement watching a horror movie. They had a Ouija board. At some point, they started cursing at it and calling it bullshit and a fucking hoax. The board stopped responding. They resumed watching the movie they had paused earlier. Suddenly, the power went out. Everyone started screaming, and the television began transmitting a blank signal. Amid the screams and cries of those present, the screen went dark. Just a moment later, a phrase appeared on the screen. "This is no longer a game." Then the television switched off, leaving the group in darkness. Frightened by the experience, everyone returned to their homes. My sister and I tried to be brave and stayed alert for a while, fearing that other strange phenomena might occur. But everything went back to normal. We still can't logically explain what happened that night, especially that threatening message on the screen. Was it just a simple collective hallucination, a product of suggestion? No one will ever know. The doll. Or a terrifying story about the Ouija board. One day I got a call from my cousin who told me that he, his brother, his father, and his best friend were having a session with that Ouija board in their basement. Before they started, they had taken a large porcelain doll out of the room because it gave them the creeps, and they had placed it in an adjacent room, laying it face down on a pile of towels. After a while, my cousin decided to take a break. Because the board kept producing nonsense sentences, T went to the bathroom. His father, his brother, and his friend started asking questions while he was away. One of them was, "Who is there in the other room?" The board generated only random numbers and letters. When my cousin came back to the room, his brother said that the Ouija board didn't work, that they would put it away. He showed him the answer to their last question. And he said, "Bro, that's my social security number." At this point, they told the entity they were communicating with to give them proof of its presence. The indicator instantly displayed DOL, doll. They all remained silent, in a state of pure terror. Right after, they decided to go into the next room to check if the porcelain doll was still where they had left it. And when they opened the door, it was standing right in front of the entrance with its eyes looking exactly in the direction where they were. Panicking, every single one of them rushed out of the room. The next day, my cousin's best friend burned the Ouija board they had used the night before. He never wanted to hear about it again. And who could blame him? 10 hours of blackout. I was just a 14 or 15-year-old girl when I found myself involved in this strange and unsettling experience. My friend owned a Ouija board that we often used to pass the time. I admit I never took those sessions seriously, considering them just a simple game for fun. It was one evening around 9 post-meridian when we decided to use the board again. We received some very strange and unsettling answers. Even though, after 27 years, I can't remember a single one of them in detail. However, there is one thing that has stuck in my mind, a name, Hakim. I remember that the entity claimed to be from Malaysia and that it was there to protect us. Then suddenly, something totally unexpected happened. In the blink of an eye, it was 7 a.m. We had lost 10 hours of our lives, victims of a complete blackout. None of us remembers what happened during that period of time. We were sitting at the table looking at each other in disbelief, asking each other, what the hell happened? Unfortunately, no third person was present to explain. From that day on, the Ouija board was relegated to a drawer, forgotten and abandoned. We no longer dared play with it, after learning a deeply shocking lesson. What had happened during those 10 hours? What had we done? Or maybe we had witnessed something so terrifying that our minds decided to erase it from our memory. A mystery that no one will ever be able to solve. Max, it was the time of adolescence when I was just 14 years old, and my best friend had organized a pajama party to celebrate her birthday. Like typical silly girls, we decided to make a Ouija board to entertain ourselves. After about an hour, tired of those odd digressions, I went back to watching television with two friends who wanted nothing to do with the game. And that's when things started to take a strange turn. As soon as I left, the spirit communicating with my friends changed. He introduced himself as Maxie, and according to what they said, he was looking for me. Strangely, I had never met anyone named Max in my life. My enthusiastic friends brought me messages that appeared on the board, all addressed to me. At first, I thought they were just making fun of me, until intimate and personal details about my life started to emerge that no one could have known. Little personal problems I was dealing with and family situations I had never shared with anyone. That discovery really scared me. I begged my friends to stop playing with the board. Fortunately, they were incredibly understanding and immediately ended the session. About a year passed before I crossed paths with a Ouija board again. This time, there was only one girl in the group who had been at the pajama party the previous year. We were busy making a cake together and weren't actively taking part in the session. However, when we approached the group that was playing, one of the girls asked me an unexpected question. "Excuse me, can I ask you a question?" I smiled and said, "Sure." "And her?" Looking puzzled. "Who is Max?" My face instantly went pale. There was no one involved in the seance at the table on Christmas Eve that day who could have known about Max. I had made sure that all the participants of the previous year's pajama party were aware that I didn't want that story to be mentioned, and I'm sure that everyone kept the promise they made. So how was it possible for that name to resurface so suddenly? Who was Max and what did he want from me? I chose not to investigate further. I never intended to find out who this mysterious person was or why he was looking for me. Maybe it was better to leave things as they were without looking into it any further. I would never have known the truth about Max, and honestly, I was convinced that I didn't even want to know. Tam, my name is Pam, and I grew up in a family deeply religious. I thought I had a stable and peaceful life until my mother started using a Wicca board. I had been away from home for a few weeks, but when I returned, I was shocked by the transformation my mother had undergone. That quiet and gentle woman had become a dark and frightening character. She began carrying the Wicca board everywhere, consulting it for advice on every decision. One night, while I was trying to fall asleep, I had a clear feeling of being watched. Suddenly, I saw my mother enter the room. I shared my fears with her. But her response was a mocking laugh, accompanied by a disturbing revelation. According to her, there was someone protecting me, but that someone was not God. Later that same night, I heard noises coming from downstairs, as if there was a party going on. Looking at the clock, I saw that it was 1 a.m. I got up and carefully went downstairs. When I got there, I saw the Ouija board pointer, which was on a small table moving by itself. My mother was sitting in front of it, and different voices, both male and female, were coming out of her mouth. The next day, when my mother was distracted, I took the board and burned it, hoping that it would be enough to put an end to that terrifying situation. But my mother didn't stop. She bought another board and kept it with her for years. After her death, the Ouija board disappeared from the house. We looked for it everywhere, but it seems to have vanished. I know it may sound like a made-up story, but it really happened. I hadn't spoken to anyone before now. It has always been one of my family's darkest secrets, but telling it here today feels like a kind of liberation. It must be said, however, that after my mother died, peace returned to my family. We still don't understand what happened. Why did my mother become so obsessed with the Ouija board? Well, maybe it's better not to know. And these, guys, are 7 terrifying stories about the Ouija board. Of course, it's likely that some of them are simply the result of suggestion or the imagination of those who posted them on the web at the time. However, one thing is undeniable. Considering the Ouija board as simple entertainment is like playing with fire. You might get away with it for a while, but sooner or later, you could end up getting burned. That's right. But what do you guys think about the Ouija board? Do you know any stories related to it? Or have you had any personal experiences? If the answer is yes, tell me about it in a comment. The Unexplainable podcast is an original series, created, written, and hosted by Luca Perella. Production, editing, and sound design by Matteo Alessandro. Follow it on YouTube and on all podcast music platforms.